Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are performing a bit of an exorcism.
An exorcism. That is a remarkably heavy way to start a conversation about business software and venture capital.
It feels necessary, though. I mean, we need to exorcise the Hollywood version of Silicon Valley from our collective consciousness.
Ah, okay, I'm with you now.
You know the scene I'm talking about, the montage where a socially awkward genius writes some, impossible formula on a dorm room window, high-fives his roommate, and then smash cut, they're billionaires.
Right, ringing the NASDAQ bell while confetti rains down.
Exactly. It's a great story. It's romantic. It fits the hero's journey perfectly. It is also, according to this massive stack of documents we have to parse today, a complete fabrication that ruins lives.
It doesn't just ruin lives, it destroys capital and, potential. If you try to build a startup using a movie script as your business plan, you are going to hit a concrete wall at 100 miles an hour.
Because the reality is so different.
So different. Real startups are much messier, much more painful, significantly less glamorous, and frankly, much more interesting than the movie version.
And to get us to that reality, we are dissecting a source that was just dropped today, February 14, 2026. It is a comprehensive compilation titled Paul Graham's Advice to Tech Startups, The Golden Nuggets.
A very timely source.
Now, for anyone who might be uninitiated, we need to establish who Paul Graham is. Because in the world of tech, there are a lot of gurus, selling courses online. He isn't that.
No, absolutely not. In the ecosystem of technology, Paul Graham, or PG as he's pretty much universally known, is essentially the architect of the modern startup accelerator. He co-founded Y Combinator.
Wait, see, the factory.
The factory, exactly. I mean, the accelerator that produced Airbnb, Stripe, Dropbox, Reddit, Coinbase, Instacart. The list of companies that came out of that program is basically a list of the apps on your phone's home screen.
So he's seen the pattern.
He's seen the pattern thousands of times. And before that, Graham co-founded a company called ViaWeb back in the 90s, which was acquired by Yahoo. So his advice isn't, academic theory from a business school professor who never actually sold a product.
Right, it's not theoretical.
No, it is a field manual written from the trenches. He has seen thousands of companies live, and just as importantly, he has seen thousands of them die.
And that mortality rate is so central to our discussion today. What strikes me about this compilation is the tone. It's not, here is how to succeed and buy a yacht. It feels more like, here's how not to die immediately.
That is the core tension. It really is. Graham defines a startup not as some brilliant flash of inspiration, but as a stubborn act of iteration. It is a grind. And if we had to boil this entire deep dive down to a single mantra, it is the 3 sentences that repeat throughout the text like a drumbeat.
What are they?
Make something users want. Grow fast, don't die.
It sounds so deceptively simple. Make something users want. But as we're going to unpack this, we'll realize that human beings are actually just terrible at judging what other people want.
We are notoriously bad at it. I mean, we are great at guessing what we think would be cool or, what we think makes us look smart, but we are terrible at empathy at scale.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, the definition. I think the word startup has been diluted over the years. It's become a synonym for just any new business.
Oh, for sure.
If I open a really hip coffee shop with an app for loyalty points, am I a startup? If I launch a freelance graphic design agency, am I a startup? People call those startups all the time.
And Paul Graham draws a very hard line in the sand here.
Yeah.
And it often upsets people who want the cultural cachet of being a founder. He says, no, a coffee shop is a small business. A consulting firm is a small business. A startup is a temporary organization designed to do one specific thing: grow fast.
So growth is the only metric that distinguishes the two. Is that it?
Yeah. It is the primary biological difference. Think of it this way. A coffee shop is constrained by physics, by geography. You can only serve people within, a 10-minute walk or drive?
Sure, your local market.
To grow, you have to open a second physical location, hire a new manager, sign a new lease, buy a whole new espresso machine. That is linear growth. A startup, on the other hand, is designed for scalability. It's a company that can serve 1 million users with marginally more effort than it takes to serve one.
So the cost to acquire the millionth user is close to zero.
Exactly. The software is already written. The servers can handle the load. That's the magic. So if you aren't aiming for that kind of exponential growth, if you're aiming for a nice, steady income, You might have a great business, a wonderful business, but you shouldn't use the startup playbook.
And using the wrong playbook is fatal.
It's completely fatal. If a coffee shop tries to blitz scale and burn cash like a tech startup to acquire customers, it goes bankrupt immediately.
Right, you can't give away free coffee for a year.
And conversely, if a tech startup acts like a conservative small business and just focuses on a steady 5% annual growth, it gets crushed by a competitor who is willing to lose money to grow faster and capture the market. Graham argues that everything people associate with startups, venture capital, stock options, huge equity splits, those are just tools to manage that insane growth. They aren't the definition.
So the source material uses this visualization of the S-curve to map out this trajectory. I found this incredibly helpful to visualize why the early days feel so hopeless. Can you walk us through that geometry?
Yeah, the S-curve it's the map of a successful startup's life. So picture an S on a graph. The bottom left of the S is flat. It's almost horizontal. Graham calls this the confusing early struggle.
This is the trough of sorrow, isn't it? I've heard that phrase.
It is. That's exactly what it is. You have a product, you have a few users, maybe your mom and your friends, but the engine isn't catching. You are pushing a boulder uphill, and it feels like it's rolling back on you every single day. The line on the graph isn't moving up.
And this is where most people quit.
Overwhelmingly, most founders quit here because they assume if the idea was good, it would explode immediately, like in the movies. They mistake the flat line for failure.
But the flat line is normal.
The flat line is mandatory. You have to go through it. You are searching for what they call product market fit. But, and this is the key, if you survive that and you figure out the engine, you hit the middle of the S.
The vertical ascent.
The vertical ascent. That is rapid compounding growth. That's when the line on the graph goes nearly straight up.
That's the chaos phase.
That's the hold on for dear life phase. That's Uber expanding to a new city every week. That's Facebook taking over campus after campus. That is where the billion-dollar companies are forged. And then eventually, you hit the top of the S and the line flattens out again because you've saturated the market. You become a big, boring utility. But the startup phase is strictly that fight to get from the bottom flat line to the vertical explosion.
Okay, so we know the goal is that vertical line. Now, let's talk about how to even get on the graph. The advice in the source material regarding the pre-startup phase is completely counterintuitive. I feel like the standard advice is always go to a whiteboard, brainstorm, come up with a billion-dollar idea.
And Graham just hates that advice. He basically says, don't try to think of startup ideas.
Which sounds like a Zen koan or something.
Yeah.
How do you start a company without thinking of an idea for it?
It's what the source calls the paradox of readiness. If you sit in a room and say, okay, team, I need to think of a unicorn idea today, your brain will naturally drift toward things that sound like startup ideas but aren't. We'll get to what he calls sitcom ideas in a minute.
Okay.
His advice is indirect preparation.
Live in the future, then build what's missing. I think that's a direct quote.
Exactly. He advises you to become a power user of reality. Work deeply on hard technical problems, scratch your own itch. If you look at the history of the biggest companies, they rarely started with a formal business plan. Apple started because Steve Wozniak, he was a hobbyist, he just wanted a computer for himself. Google started because Larry Page and Sergey Brin were trying to index the web for their academic purposes at Stanford. They were projects, not companies.
So you're not trying to start a business, you're trying to solve a problem that you have, and it just so happens that a million other people have it too.
Yes. The business is a byproduct of a genuine solution. And this leads to his specific advice for students or, young people. He actually advises delaying founding a company.
Which totally contradicts the college dropout billionaire narrative that we all love so much.
It does. But he doesn't say delay to avoid risk. He says delay to increase your surface area for luck.
I love that phrase, surface area for luck. It sounds so scientific. Unpack that for the listener. What does that actually mean?
Imagine luck is like rain. If you are just standing in one spot, you might get hit by a drop. But if you spread out a massive tarp, you're going to catch a lot more water.
Okay, that's a great visual.
So in your career, you increase your surface area for luck by doing interesting, hard things. You travel, you learn to code, you learn design, you work on weird side projects, you read history, you accumulate what he calls intellectual raw material.
You're filling the pantry so that when you eventually decide to cook, you actually have ingredients to choose from.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If you try to start a company at 19 and you've never worked a real job, your understanding of the world's problems is incredibly narrow.
Right.
You only know what a 19-year-old student knows, and that's why you get so many startups that are just like food delivery for campuses or a social network for parties.
Because that's the only problem they've actually encountered.
Right. But if you go work in logistics for a shipping company for 2 years, suddenly you see, oh my God, the software they use to track containers is from 1980 and it's completely broken. Now you have a deep well idea. You have specialized, earned knowledge.
This leads perfectly into this trap he calls playing house. This section of the source material was, it was brutal. It felt like he was calling out 90% of the people on LinkedIn.
Playing house is when you optimize for the appearance of being a startup founder rather than the actual reality of solving a problem for a customer.
It's the cargo quote science of business. You're doing the rituals without understanding the substance.
It is. It's the founders who raise a seed round and immediately rent an office with exposed brick and buy a bunch of Herman Miller chairs.
Yeah, I have the Aaron chairs.
They hire a head of brand before they even have a product. They print business cards. They go speak on panels. They are just obsessed with the lifestyle of being a founder.
They want the badge that says founder without the pain of actually building something.
Graham is absolutely ruthless about this. He calls these things props. A startup is not a play. It is a war for survival. And if you are spending mental energy on office decor, you aren't spending it on users. And in the early days, if you aren't building product or talking to users, you are dying. Every single dollar you spend on a prop is a dollar less runway. You have to figure out the puzzle.
Okay, so let's assume we've avoided that trap. We aren't playing house. We've done our indirect preparation. We've built some skills. Now we actually need the idea. The source material references the classic essay, How to Get Startup Ideas, and it lists 3 properties of a truly great idea.
Right, the holy trinity of ideation. Number 1, the founders want it themselves. It scratches their own itch. 2, they can build it themselves, at least the first version. And 3, few others realize it's valuable yet.
That third one,
Yeah.
that's the really difficult one. Few others realize it's valuable yet. Because if everyone realized it was valuable, Amazon or Microsoft would have already built it.
Exactly. If an idea sounds good and obvious to everyone you tell, it's probably too late. You need an idea that sounds like a toy. You need an idea that makes people say, that's cute, but is it a real business?
The source uses this analogy of the deep well versus the shallow lake. I think this is a crucial mental model for evaluating any idea. Can you break this down?
Yeah, visualizing the market is key here. A shallow lake idea is something millions of people sort of want. Let's say, I wish there was a better way to organize my holiday recipes.
Okay.
If you ask 100 people, would you use this? 90 of them might say, sure, I guess.
But no one is waking up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat because their recipes are disorganized. There's no real pain.
Exactly. There is no pain. There's only mild inconvenience, and you cannot build a high-growth company on mild inconvenience. You need a deep well. A deep well is an idea where maybe only 10,000 people want it right now, but those 10,000 people need it like they need oxygen. They are absolutely desperate for it.
The classic case study here is Facebook. It's almost your example of this.
It's the perfect example. When Mark Zuckerberg launched the Facebook, it wasn't a tool for the world. It was a directory for Harvard students. The market was tiny, maybe, 6,000 people total?
Incredibly small.
But the density of usage was completely off the charts. Everyone at Harvard used it 5 times a day. It was a very, very deep well.
And from that depth, he could then expand the width.
Yes. He went to Yale, then Columbia, then the rest of the Ivy League, then U.S. colleges, then the world. If he had launched Facebook for Earth on day 1, it would have been a shallow lake, and it would have died from indifference. You always want to monopolize a small market before you try to attack a large one.
Now, we touched on sitcom ideas earlier. This is one of Graham's funniest concepts, but it's also a trap I think really smart people fall into constantly. What exactly constitutes a sitcom idea?
A sitcom idea is a startup idea that sounds plausible to a writer for a TV show who needs a character to have a startup.
Okay, I think I get it.
It relies on the grammar of a startup idea without any of the substance. It sounds like it should be a business.
Okay, give me an example.
Uber for pet grooming, or a social network for pet owners to arrange playdates.
Oh, wow, those sound completely real. I feel like I've seen those pitch decks.
They sound real because they follow the structure X for Y, but they fail the reality test. Do pet owners actually have a burning daily problem of arranging playdates for their dogs? No. They just text their friend who has a dog or they go to the park. The solution sounds valid, but the problem doesn't actually exist in a painful way.
So it solves a phantom problem.
And the danger of sitcom ideas is that they don't get hate. Nobody hates the idea of a pet playdate app. They're just totally indifferent to it. And as Graham says, indifference is the true killer of startups. Hate implies passion. If people hate your product, you might be onto something controversial and important, but you cannot fix meh.
So how do we find these non-sitcom ideas? The source brings up this term, schlep blindness. I love this term. Schlep is Yiddish.
Right, yeah. It effectively means a tedious, unpleasant journey or task, a real pain. And schlep blindness is our brain's subconscious filter that just blocks out problems that involve messy, boring, bureaucratic work.
We just filter them out because we don't want to deal with them. It looks too hard.
Precisely. We see a problem, and our brain immediately says, ugh, that's impossible. That involves dealing with banks, or that would involve calling 1,000 landlords one by one, so we don't even register it as a business opportunity. But Graham argues that the unattractive, messy problems are where the gold is buried.
The source mentions Stripe as the definitive cure for schlep blindness.
Before Stripe, accepting credit card payments online was an absolute nightmare, a total schlep. You had to physically go to a bank, fill out paper forms, wait weeks for something called a merchant account, set up a payment gateway. It was so painful that for a decade, thousands of brilliant hackers just ignored the problem. They built other things because they didn't want to deal with the banking system.
It's just too much of a pain.
Way too much. But the Collison brothers, Patrick and John, they looked at that mess and said, we will eat the pain.
We will take the schlep so the user doesn't have to.
That's the mantra. They did the dirty work of integrating with the entire global financial system so that developers could just write 7 lines of code. And that is a $1 trillion insight.
Airbnb is another one. The idea of letting strangers sleep in your house involves incredible friction. It's not just software.
It's the ultimate schlep. It's physically intrusive. It requires trust, insurance, photography, handing over keys, cleaning toilets. It is not pure software. It's messy reality. And that's why Google didn't do it. That's why Microsoft didn't do it. It required too much hustle, too much real-world mess.
So the heuristic for the listener is, if you find a problem that makes you physically wince because it seems so annoying to solve, you should probably run towards it.
That's it. If it feels like real hard work, it's probably a business. If it feels like a fun, creative exercise, it might just be a sitcom idea.
That is a brilliant filter.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the idea. Now we need the team. Graham is very, very specific about this. The solopreneur might be trendy on Twitter, but it's not the YC model.
No, not at all. He compares a startup to an expedition, like climbing Everest. Could you climb Everest alone? Theoretically, yes. But if you slip, you die. If you get demoralized, there's no one there to pump you up. Graham says startup success is almost entirely a function of the founder's relationship.
The source material actually ranks the criteria that Y Combinator looks for in founders.
Yeah.
I want to run through these because the order is really surprising. I think most people would assume intelligence or technical skill is number 1, but it's not.
No. Number 1 is determination.
Why determination over raw intelligence?
Because you can be an absolute genius, but if you crumble the first time a server crashes or the 10th investor says no, your intelligence doesn't matter. Startups are just a series of punches to the face. You will get sued. Your co-founder might quit. Your biggest competitor will clone you. If you are just smart, you will calculate the odds, realize they are terrible, and you'll quit. You need to be almost irrationally determined.
You need a bit of delusion to get you through.
You need what he calls benevolent obsession.
Okay, number 2 on the list is flexibility.
And this balances the determination. You need to be stubborn about the goal, but completely flexible about the path to get there. If you are determined to drive through a brick wall, you will just crash. Flexibility means realizing, okay, the wall is solid, let's find a window. You have to listen to the data, listen to your users.
Number 3 is imagination.
This is the ability to find those schlep ideas in the first place. Seeing the opportunity where others see only annoyance. It's the ability to see a different version of the future and believe it's possible.
And number 4 is my favorite, naughtiness.
Yes. This is so often misunderstood. He doesn't mean being unethical or, breaking the law. He means having a piratical streak. A rule-bending intelligence.
Okay.
Startups are, by definition, challenging the status quo. If you are a person who follows every single rule, waits for permission and colors inside the lines, you will get crushed by a large corporation. You need to be willing to hack the system a little bit.
It's the hacker ethos, asking, why is this the rule, rather than just blindly following it.
That is exactly what it is.
And finally, friendship.
This is the glue that holds it all together. You are going to spend more time with your co-founder than with your partner or spouse for the next 5 years, easily. If there isn't deep pre-existing trust, the stress will crack the relationship, and founder breakups are the #1 cause of startup death in the early stages, bar none.
The source also mentions this hiring test he uses called the animal test. Can you describe this person as an animal? It sounds ridiculous on the surface, but explain the logic behind that.
It's a visceral gut check. When you look at a potential co-founder or an early employee, do they have a sort of animalistic quality towards their work? Are they obsessive? Are they relentless?
You mean, do they need to work the way a beaver needs to build a dam?
That's the perfect way to put it. A beaver doesn't build a dam because it's on its to-do list or because its manager told it to. It builds a dam because it is a beaver. You want builders who need to ship code. You want salespeople who need to close deals like a predator needs to hunt. You don't want professionals. You want animals.
I love that. I need a beaver, not a consultant.
That should be on a YC t-shirt.
Oh. Okay, let's move to part 5. Building and launching. We have the team, we have the idea, now we build, and the core advice here is V1 is a probe.
This reframes the whole launch anxiety that founders have. A lot of founders treat their first launch like it's a Hollywood movie premiere. They want everything to be perfect. They want the press release, the spotlight, the applause from TechCrunch.
They want to be on the front page of Hacker News.
Right. And Graham says, no, V1 is a scientific probe. You are sending it into the atmosphere of reality to see if there is oxygen. That's it.
You're not trying to impress. You're trying to learn.
You are just checking for a pulse.
Yeah.
The goal of V1 is to get it in front of users as fast as humanly possible so you can see where it breaks. And this is so critical. You need to watch what users do, not just listen to what they say.
Because users lie.
Users are polite. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They will say, oh, this is a really cool app. Great job. And then they will never log in again. Behavior is the only truth. Retention is the only truth. Are they coming back?
This connects directly to the concept of fanatics, the idea that it is better to have 100 people who absolutely love you than 10,000 who kind of like you.
This is the fundamental math of satisfaction.
Yeah.
You can scale love. You cannot scale kind of like. If 100 people love your product so much they tell all their friends, you have a self-sustaining fire. If 10,000 people think it's just okay, you have a leaky bucket. You will spend all your time and money on marketing just to replace the people who are leaving.
So finding those first 100 fanatics is the primary mission of the early stage.
It's the only mission.
Which brings us to growth tactics. And this is where we get the most famous Paul Graham advice of all time, the one everyone quotes. Do things that don't scale.
This is the advice that makes engineers deeply uncomfortable. Engineers want to write elegant code that works for 1 million people automatically. They want to build systems. And Graham says, in the beginning, you must do manual, unscalable, gritty work to get the engine running.
The classic case study here is Airbnb again. The cereal box story is famous, but I think the photography story is even more relevant to the product itself.
Right. So early Airbnb in New York City was failing. It just wasn't working. The listings looked terrible because hosts were taking pictures with their, old flip phones. The photos were dark, grainy, and just really unappealing. Nobody was booking rooms.
So the scalable engineering solution would be write a tutorial for hosts on how to take better photos, or build an algorithm to automatically enhance photos.
That's what a big company would do. That's what Google would do. But Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia did the completely unscalable thing. They rented a nice camera, flew to New York, and went door to door, personally taking the photos themselves.
The CEO and the chief product officer acting as freelance photographers.
It sounds completely absurd. It doesn't scale. You can't personally photograph 1 million homes. But, and this is the magic, by doing that, they achieved 2 critical things. 1, the revenue in New York tripled instantly because the site looked beautiful. And 2, and this is much more important, they got inside the hosts' homes. They had tea with them. They learned exactly what the problems were, what the hosts were worried about, what they needed.
That manual hustle gave them the insights they needed to build the software later on.
Exactly. You do it manually first to learn what to automate. If you try to automate before you understand the human nuance, you will almost certainly automate the wrong thing.
The source also talks about offering astonishing service, not just good service, but something memorable.
In the early days, you should answer every support email within 2 minutes. You should call your first users on the phone and just talk to them. You should make them feel like they are the most important person in the world, because at that stage they are. You can't do that when you have 10 million users, but you must do it when you have 10.
Let's talk about the fuel for all this activity. Part 7. Money.
Or as Graham often calls it, time. Money in a startup is just a way to buy time, time to find product market fit.
He is very clear that raising money is not success. This is a huge misconception. We see the headlines all the time. Company X raises $10 million, and we think, wow, they made it.
Raising money isn't making it. It's taking on debt, either literal debt or equity debt. It's obligation. The headline should really read, Company X takes on massive expectations and now has a bunch of new bosses.
But within this, there is this concept of ramen profitability. What does that mean, and why is it such a powerful psychological lever?
Ramen profitability means the startup is making just enough money to pay for the founder's basic living expenses, enough to buy ramen noodles and pay the rent on a cheap apartment.
You're not buying Ferraris, you're just not dying. You're off the ventilator.
You are biologically self-sufficient as a company, and psychologically, this changes everything. Once you are ramen profitable, you don't need investors anymore. You have infinite runway. You are the master of your own destiny.
And investors can smell that, can't they? They can smell the lack of desperation.
Oh, absolutely. Investors are momentum hunters. They smell desperation a mile away. If you need their money to survive next month, they will crush you on terms or just ignore you. But if you walk into a meeting and say, look, we are profitable, we don't strictly need your money, but we might take it to grow faster, suddenly the entire dynamic flips. They start chasing you.
It's the ultimate negotiation tactic.
Right.
Being able to genuinely walk away from the table.
Precisely. It's real power.
And to get there, you need what he calls a culture of poverty.
You have to keep the team living like grad students for as long as possible. Cheap apartments as offices, IKEA tables, no executive assistants. He argues that constraints breed creativity. If you have too much money, you solve problems by hiring more people or buying ads. If you have no money, you have to solve problems by being clever.
And being clever is what builds a better, more efficient product in the long run.
Every single time, wastefulness becomes a cultural habit that's very hard to break.
Now, speaking of breaking, Part 8, How Startups Die. There are 18 killers listed in the source, but the text mentions they all really boil down to 2 meta failures.
Right. There are only 2 ways to die. 1, not making something users want. 2, running out of money.
Simple as that.
Everything else is just a specific flavor of one of those 2. But looking at the specific traps is still really useful.
Okay, let's rapid fire a few of these and you can give me the quick diagnosis. First up, single founder.
Loneliness. It's a huge psychological burden. There's no one to bounce ideas off of, no one to pick you up when you're down. The data shows it's just statistically much, much harder to succeed alone.
Next, marginal niche.
This is playing it too safe. You pick a small, easy idea like, I don't know, software for left-handed basket weavers. You might capture the entire market, but the market is only 500 people. It's too small to support a venture-scale company. You avoided competition, but you also avoided any meaningful prize.
Derivative ideas.
These are the copycats. We are the Uber for tacos. We are the Airbnb for dogs. These usually fail because they're starting with a solution, like the Uber model, and trying to force it onto a problem, rather than starting with a deep understanding of the problem itself.
Hiring weak engineers.
This is probably the most fatal technical error you can make. A startup is built on code. If your first few engineers are B players, they will inevitably hire C players because they are threatened by A players.
The bozo explosion, as Steve Jobs called it.
Exactly. And once the bozo explosion happens, the company is dead. You just don't know it yet. You accumulate technical debt, development slows to a crawl, and all your A players get frustrated and leave.
So it seems like death is rarely one big explosion, one fatal blow. It's an accumulation of small mistakes.
It's death by 1,000 cuts. You hire one mediocre person, you ignore one user complaint, you spend a little too much on office snacks, none of them kill you on their own. But 6 months later, you look at the bank account and realize you have 2 weeks of runway left, and you have no idea how you got there.
Okay, so assuming we manage to avoid all of these traps, we start to scale. And this brings us to a really interesting and more modern concept in Graham's philosophy, the difference between founder mode and manager mode.
Yes, this is a very hot topic right now in the Valley. It really challenges the standard business school dogma that has existed for decades.
And the standard dogma being, great, you founders built the product, you got it off the ground. Now step aside, hire a professional CEO, an adult, and let the real managers run the room.
Grow up. Delegate. Don't micromanage. That has been the advice for 40 years. And Graham argues that this manager mode is actually what breaks many great tech companies as they scale.
Why? I mean, what is so wrong with professional management?
Professional managers are trained to optimize, not to create. They manage by metrics, by consensus, by org charts. They treat the company like a machine that just needs a little bit of tuning. But a tech company isn't a machine. It's a living organism that needs constant reinvention to survive.
So what is founder mode in contrast?
Founder mode is staying deeply, almost weirdly, involved in the details, even as the company gets huge. It's Steve Jobs insisting that the inside of the Macintosh looks beautiful, even though no customer will ever see it. It's Brian Chesky at Airbnb personally reviewing the pixels on a new app update when he has thousands of employees.
The source mentions Chesky specifically.
Yeah.
He apparently had this revelation that he'd become a bureaucrat in his own company.
He did. He was following all the manager mode advice, hiring VPs and execs and letting them do their thing. And the product started to drift. It lost its soul, its cohesion. So he kind of fired a bunch of people and went back to founder mode. He started doing skip level meeting.
What's a skip level meeting?
It means you, as the CEO, bypass your executives and your middle managers and talk directly to the people who are actually doing the work. The designers, the junior engineers, you find out what is actually happening on the ground unfiltered.
It sounds like micromanagement. I mean, isn't that considered bad?
In a traditional manager mode company, it is micromanagement and it's deeply annoying to the managers you're skipping. But in founder mode, it's seen as maintaining the bar. The founder brings something to the table that a hired executive never can. A deep, intuitive fusion of the original vision with a very specific taste.
Vision fused with taste. I like that. You can't outsource taste.
No, you can't. And if the founder disconnects from the product eventually becomes a decision made by a committee. And committee decisions are never great products. They're just, okay.
This leads us to the end game, really. Part 10. Superlinear returns. This is the math of why anyone would put themselves through all this pain in the first place.
This is the concept of convexity. Most normal jobs have linear returns. You work an hour, you get paid for an hour. If you work twice as hard, you might make twice as much, maybe a little more with a bonus.
A pretty direct
A
relationship.
very direct, capped relationship. Startups are different. Startups are super linear. If you build a system that scales, working twice as hard might produce 100 times the results. The returns compound on themselves.
So the rich get richer, in a sense.
In a sense, yes. But it's more that the successful get more successful. Small differences in growth rates lead to massive differences in outcome over time. A company growing at 5% a week ends up being hundreds of times bigger than a company growing at 1% a week after just a few years. The gap becomes enormous.
So the advice to young people is, put yourself in a position where superlinear returns are at least possible.
Don't play games where the payout is capped. Play games where the upside is theoretically infinite. Pick fields with these winner-take-most dynamics.
The source material wraps up with a survival checklist. It's 13 sentences that condense this entire philosophy. I want to read them to you, and I want you to just give me one word or a short phrase on why each one is on that list.
Okay, let's do it.
Number 1, pick good co-founders.
Foundation. Everything rests on them.
Number 2, launch fast.
Learning. You can't learn in a vacuum.
Number 3, let your idea evolve.
Survival, because your funked idea is almost certainly wrong.
4, understand your users.
Empathy, it's the only compass you have.
5, make a few love you.
Fire, you need that initial spark to start the blaze.
6, offer great customer service.
Retention, don't let the bucket leak.
7, measure what matters.
Focus, ignore all the vanity metrics.
8, spend little.
Endurance, because money is time.
9, get ramen profitable.
Freedom, it's freedom from investors.
10, avoid distractions.
Speed, distraction is the enemy of speed.
11, don't get demoralized.
Resilience, this is a mental game more than anything.
12, don't give up.
Grit, the last one standing often wins.
And 13, deals fall through.
Reality, trust nothing until the wire hits the bank account.
It really is a checklist for war, not for a business school project.
It is. And the underlying theme of all of it, the meta skill, is self-honesty.
That's the moral stance that's mentioned in the outro section.
The hardest part isn't the coding. It isn't the fundraising. It's not lying to yourself. And founders constantly lie to themselves. Oh, the users love it. They just haven't found the button yet. No, they don't love it. Oh, this VC is definitely going to invest. They said they loved the pitch. No, they aren't.
You have to be able to look in the mirror and see the ugly truth so that you can actually fix it.
Emotional resilience is the true currency. Technical brilliance is common. I mean, there are thousands of brilliant engineers in Silicon Valley, but the ability to get punched in the face by reality, admit you were wrong, fix it, and keep moving forward, that is incredibly rare.
Gravity favors those who compound.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the fundamental definition of growth to the schlep, from animalistic determination to the nuances of founder mode. It's a complete ecosystem of thought.
It really is a worldview. It's a way of looking at the world as something that is malleable, something you can change if you are willing to do the dirty work.
I want to leave our listeners with this final provocative thought from the source material. It mentions that the age of abundance was prophesied long ago, and it posits this question. If startups are the engines of superlinear growth, these machines that create massive value out of thin air, are founders simply the mechanics of an inevitable prophecy?
It's a wild thought. We think of ourselves as these great agents of change, but maybe we are just the workers building the infrastructure for a post-scarcity world that was always going to happen.
And if that's true, if you are listening to this and you feel that animal intensity we talked about, what schlep are you currently ignoring? What messy, annoying problem are you stepping over every single day that could be the key to unlocking that abundance?
That is the question. Where is the dirt that hides the gold?
Go find the dirt. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.